It is 6:02. I'm sure we're going to have some more people joining us, but we will get started. I want to welcome everyone here tonight to our Parent Learning Series. This is the second one that we are so graciously receiving from Colleen Penzone and Molly Weber from the NEIU. They are the behavior specialist gurus that are going to share their secrets with us. We had one last month, which was the ABCs of behavior. And tonight we are going to hear about positive language, how to use positive language to improve your child's behavior. Is there a lag? Are you hearing me, or is there a lag?
I can hear you.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to make Colleen the host right now so that she can share the slides with everyone. And if, as you're joining us, just make sure that you are on mute so that we can see. 1 second. Let's just get everybody settled. You just want to make sure that you are on mute so that we can hear the presenters. And there will not be a Q&A after this, but as you remember from last time, you can put any questions in the chat and we will get the answers to you. And the question last time was, will you be able to get the slides? And the answer is yes, you'll be able to hear this recording. So you'll be able to watch this back. So just watch it, relaxing tonight, knowing that you don't have to be taking notes or anything. You can watch the playback at a different time. And just because there is a lot of information to cover, we won't be able to open it up to questions while the presenters are presenting, but we can certainly get answers. So please, if you have questions, let us know. So without further ado, Colleen and Molly.
Great, thank you so much. So yeah, like Elizabeth said, we're here today for our second session, and we're doing how to use positive language to improve your child's behavior today. And I just have to make sure, okay. As you can see, we do have two other sessions that we wanted to show you, just in case you were interested in the other two. So on November 30th, our session is titled How to Help Your Child Understand and Label Emotions. And the last one that we have scheduled is January 25th, and that one is Understanding Early Intervention Services and Eligibility. So that one's really geared towards anybody who might feel like they are looking for a referral to early intervention. If you're interested in an evaluation for your child, you think that your child might have a delay in an area of development, or if you have questions about eligibility that you just want to understand it a little bit more. So that one's a little bit more specific, but the one on November 30th is really a great session to just talk about label emotions. We were really focusing on behavior and the social emotional. So we're excited about that. And we do like to start with a really quick survey. It's only 2 to 3 questions just to kind of hear where you're from. I know most of you got the information from Wellkind, but we did open it up to other people, to Head Starts, and to some of our families at the NEIU. So we just wanted to see if you can answer these 2 questions, just to see if we had families come from outside, just to see if, you know, where we're getting our audience from and if we can extend that anymore. So this link is in the chat. If you want to just look in the chat, you can find the link there, click in it, it'll open it up for you. And again, it's like 2 to 3 questions just to ask you, not any personal information. It's really just where your child attends so that we know where our audience is coming from and how you heard about the training today or the series, so that we know how we're reaching people.
And I do believe, Colleen, there is a question on there. You know, if you yourself are struggling with a specific behavior or a specific routine that's going on, you know, throw that in there, because Colleen and I, we love working with Wellkind and Elizabeth, and we would love to, you know, help as much as possible, develop a training, or, you know, send some resources your way. If you're struggling with a specific thing, or if there's another training that you would love to learn more about, throw that in there as well. We're always looking for feedback.
And I just wanted to jump in, ladies, in case anyone is experiencing it. I'm clicking on the link. It's asking me to sign into my Google account. So if anyone is finding that, that's okay. Just put your name then in the chat and we can get back to you to make sure that we reach out to you. What I'm saying is don't get nervous or frustrated with any technological issue. Just we'll get you if you put your name in the chat.
That's perfect. Thank you for thinking of that. Okay, so this is really just a resource page. We wanted to kind of let you know where we got the information that we're presenting today. I'm not going to read all these words to you, but really just three quick things so you know where we gathered this information from. The first one is the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations, which is really a website called challengingbehavior.org, which is much easier to remember, right? That's easy, challengingbehavior.org. That's a great website with tons of resources. There are visuals on there, social stories, information for families, information for teachers, information for, center staff. It's just a great resource for all things preschool. So if you are looking for anything related to social, emotional, or preschool development, you can look at that website, challengingbehavior.org, and probably find it. There's a search button that you can look for things. You can type in the word feelings and you'll get a whole slew of resources just around feelings, emotions, things like that. So that's a great website. The second one is something called Backpack Connection Series. And that's where we got a lot of the resources for today, which is just a one-sheeter that we send home to families on a specific topic. So today's topic was about positive language. And so a lot of that came from a Backpack Connection Series, which was a one-page resource for families on using positive language. And there are other topics that come in that series. And you can find that on the website that I just referenced. And then the last resource that we use is Ideas That Work, which comes from the Office of Special Ed Programs. So we used all of these resources for you to come up with this information. So starting with thinking about positive language, and I want to just kind of reference you to these words. And if you think about it and think about using these things, when you're yelling, stop it, or no, 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 or don't do that, how often do you find yourself saying those things? So do you think you're saying those things, how many times a day? Is it daily? Is it, weekly? Or is it multiple times a day? And for me, when I thought about having my children as a preschooler, I probably did it multiple times a day because it's very natural for us to do those kinds of things. And when we were working with our paras in our classrooms, when we started talking about the positive words versus the negative words, a lot of times they were saying, no, 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 not in a negative way or not in a mean way. Sometimes they were saying it because they were saying, no, 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 don't eat the crayon, or no, 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 don't run with scissors, right? But they were doing it because they were trying to say it was a safety concern. It's not like anybody was yelling or mean. It was sometimes we're saying these things because we're trying to stop them from falling off the couch, or, sometimes we get nervous and our immediate reaction is to yell, right? Or to say, no, stop it, don't do that, right? So those are our words that sort of naturally come out of our mouth. So I just wanted you to kind of stop and reflect and think, how often do you find yourself using those phrases? Probably more often than not, right? So what if, rather than telling your child what he can't do, instead you tell them what they can do? So that's what we're going to focus on here today. So instead of saying don't do something, we're going to focus on the do something, right? While this is a shift in language that might seem very, very small, it actually provides a very powerful positive change and the tone in our conversation. So just stop and think about that for a minute. When we're yelling, don't do that, and think about a 3 or 4-year-old and what that really means to them. Do they know what that means? Do they know what don't do that means? So instead, if we flipped that and we said, put your feet on the floor, or put your, feet or your bottom on the couch, or your bottom on the seat, right? I'm looking at my couch while I'm saying this, or you're telling them what you need them to do rather than not to do, that might make more sense to them as their brain is trying to process all the words that are coming out of our mouth. And sometimes it's heightened and we're yelling because we're worried that they're going to fall, or we're worried that, something's going to happen. Or if they are running with scissors and we want them to say, put the scissors down, right? Might make more sense than, don't do that. If we said don't do that, they might not really know what it's connecting to. So just a little small shift in our language to really focus on this is what I want you to do, rather than all of those no's and don't do that or stop. When we focus on using positive language with your child, you will likely find it has fewer tantrums, whines less, he or she rather, has fewer tantrums, whines less, and overall experiences fewer challenging behaviors. So this is just something for a practice that really takes a long time for us as adults to get used to. And it's an awareness that we start with. And then over time, as we start to kind of catch ourselves, it becomes more natural for us. But again, it is very natural for us to yell, no, stop, don't do that. So as we practice more and more and we become aware of our language and we start to catch ourselves, you can shift that language over time. And then this is the outcome. Your child will have less challenging behavior because you are giving them that directive of what to do that they can kind of comprehend a little bit better. So question then becomes, and I'm going to pass it over to Molly after this, how then can such a small change make such a big difference?
Right.
Take it away.
Yeah, Colleen talked a lot about, making your child or making the children aware of what they should do. So, toddlers, small children, they don't understand when we're saying, don't climb on the counter. They don't know why. We as adults have the processing to be able to understand that if they climb on the counter, stuff's going to fall and break. They're probably going to fall, possibly break something. But they don't necessarily understand that. So while it's obvious to adults, young children are not able to make the logical connection that when they are told not to do something, what they actually should do is the opposite. So like we said, don't climb on the counter. That can be confusing when we really mean, please keep your feet on the floor. Talking about in that positive language, it allows the children to make the appropriate choice on their own, which can boost their self-esteem. So us as adults, Colleen, for instance, is my boss. So if your boss or if your spouse, for that matter, if they're constantly saying, no, don't do that, stop doing that, you need to stop doing that. As my boss, now Colleen knows I've made plenty of mistakes in this role. I just came to it this past year. But Colleen doesn't come to me and say, no, you need to stop doing that. She'll say, hey, I think you should probably try it this way. And that boosts my self-esteem in this position while doing the work, but it's also having me learn, when this happens, this is what I should do. So it's really that thought process of just kind of being aware of, not wanting to say the no all the time, but and you're still giving the directive to the child, but you're doing it in a different way to encourage that child to understand what you're telling them to do. So like, don't climb on the counter. No, please keep your feet on the floor. That's telling them exactly what to do. When they get older, then we could kind of bring in that why you keep your feet on the floor and not climb on the counter. But when they're young, they don't necessarily have those processing skills to be able to understand that. And then we're talking about give those specific directions. So when you're specific in your directions by telling a child what they can do and when, it is easier for them to comply and they are more likely to cooperate with the request. Do you have anything to add on this one, Colleen? We're going to bounce back and forth.
No, I'm good.
So being descriptive in your feedback allows the child to understand what your expectations are. I personally am very guilty of this, especially when we're going into our classrooms or if I'm out doing an observation in a preschool or a daycare. If the child does something great, I'll immediately say, oh, great job. That was awesome. But instead, being descriptive, I love how you did that. Or for instance, I love how you helped your sister pick up her blocks. So again, it's being aware and just kind of remembering great job is abstract to a 3-year-old. It's very abstract to a 4-year-old. So we want to be very descriptive in how we are praising that child when they're doing that behavior that we want them to do.
Yeah, and just to add on that, it does feel good. Like when you're saying to a child, "Oh, that's great, good job," and "Oh, a high five," and all of that does feel good to them because you're using it in a very positive tone, in a very light voice, and sometimes it becomes like a high five or a pat on the back, and they know that it means something good because your whole demeanor kind of feels good about it, right? So they feel warm and fuzzy inside, but it doesn't necessarily tell them what to do again the next time, right? So the descriptive is giving them that, oh, they liked that I helped my sister, right? It isn't just that like they like me, it's because I did this. And the next time I'm going to do that again because they liked it. So whether it be I helped my sister pick up the books, or, I'm sitting nicely and waiting, or, I helped do something, or helped my brother, or I held hands, or whatever it is that you're looking for them to do. If you're descriptive, then they're going to relate that to, oh, I'll do that action again because they like it and I know that that's what's right. So that description is going to help them. The good jobs and the greats and high fives are not bad. It's just not giving them any feedback to like help them do it again. It's not going to change behavior, basically.
Right. So other aspects of descriptive feedback to remember include that feedback statement. So, oh, I love when you do that. Well, I love when you put the blocks back so nicely, or whatever it is that the child is doing. Don't think too hard into it. Whatever that child is doing, if it is something that you want to see more and it's that good behavior, you want to be descriptive in that feedback, having that statement. Another thing that we kind of looked at is acknowledging it publicly if you can. So whether it's a sister's around, a spouse is around, aunt, uncle, friend, whoever, if you're at the aquarium or at the mall and you see your child doing something, that's awesome, acknowledge them for it. And children love to feel good, in front of other people. It's something that makes them proud. So when appropriate, do it publicly if you can. And a lot of the times it could be just you and your child in that situation, and that's completely fine too. Also, we're going to talk about individualizing the feedback. So we know, my husband, I don't know the last time I've actually said his first name. It's always, some nickname or something, or I'll just start communicating to him. But when we're really focusing on behaviors and on using this feedback method, using that positive language, we want to individualize it. So, if my daughter's up here, Sarah, I loved how you had your hands so nicely, or, Sarah, I loved that you waited so nicely for dinner, whatever it may be. So individualizing it to that child. And then obviously be consistent. So if you are taking this time to kind of say to yourself, you know what, I'm going to try to do this descriptive feedback. I'm going to catch myself. If I'm saying no, I'm at least going to have the awareness that maybe I should try something different. So if something is happening and it's a great behavior, make sure you're still giving that descriptive feedback. Make sure you're acknowledging it for that same thing. If a behavior is happening that you do not want to see, so if the child's jumping up onto the counter or screaming and throwing blocks, make sure you're consistent in the way that you give that feedback. So I understand, some days we come home, everything's been crazy. The day's been crazy, dinners, no one wants to eat the dinner that we're making, and it's just been a day. We ourselves as the adult have to make sure that we're still being consistent. So, every now and then we might do no, everybody just stop. And that's okay because we're all human. But just you yourself be aware of, being consistent in how you're trying to form those behaviors for your children. Have anything to add to that one, Colleen? Okay.
Nope.
All right. I'm going off 2 screens here. There we go. So we're talking about responding versus noticing. And this is really just another way of talking about that descriptive feedback. So noticing the behavior or noticing the child helps to encourage the child in a way that makes their accomplishments their own, rather than making it about what we as the adult think. So in the next slide, I'll kind of go through that a little bit if you want to bounce to the next one. Okay, there's that job, that great job. When we're talking about responding, we're saying, good job, Sally. So that's me as the adult saying that whatever you're doing is good. But by noticing, I might say, Sally, you put your toys in the bin, your clothes in the drawer, and you cleaned your room so you could find things when you want them. That's about giving the ownership to the child. So the child realizes, hey, I did do that. That was really good of me to do. Responding might be, oh, you are such a good boy. But then noticing it, so why? Why is he a good boy? Does he think that he was a good boy for doing that? You handed Cody his book so he wouldn't forget it. That was helpful. So we're reinstating what it is that we would like to see, but also telling him, hey, that was really helpful to Cody that you gave him the book. Other than us just saying, you're such a good boy. Now, mind you, we can always say these things too to the kids. We're not saying don't ever say them. Responding, oh, that was a great slide. You know, if your kid's saying, hey, look at me, go down the slide. Oh, that was a great slide. But if we're encouraging or we're noticing, oh, you did it. You came down the slide feet first and landed right in my arms. So that's just another way of them saying, hey, you did come down the slide. That was wonderful. And it's their ownership. I'm going to move my little faces here. Then last one, responding. So if your child's showing you an awesome drawing, oh, your drawing is beautiful. That's what you think. We also want the child to know that, yes, what they're doing is great. So noticing would be that encouragement. You put some red crayon here, you put some blue crayon here. Look at that. It's kind of giving them the ownership, giving them the reason to be proud of it, and then to want to do those behaviors again.
Yeah, and just to add, to that. So I really love the first example, like when Molly said, you know, you've cleaned your room so you can find things when you want them. So there's a cause and effect, right, to their behavior and what happens after. So making that statement and showing them that explains the effect of it. So when they know that they've done something and something positive came out of it, they now felt like, oh, like now when I do that, something good can happen from it. Now I can find my things. Or same thing with you're such a, you know, you handed Cody his book so he wouldn't forget it, and you were helpful. So something positive came from your behavior. So similarly, like when something, you know, they have a challenging behavior and they start to experience the negative effects of it, they're going to connect those things that there's a cause and effect to their behavior. So if you do it when they do something positive as well, they're going to start to want to do the positive behaviors more so than the negatives, you know? So I think we tend to constantly focus on the negatives, and we'll say, oh, you did this, so now you have to, you know, time out, or now I'm going to take the iPad, or now we're always focused on the response to the negative, but no one ever points out those responses to the positives. So if they start to connect those things, they're going to want to do the positives more often. Like, look at what you did. Now you could find your clothes. That is the effect of cleaning up, right? So if we start focusing on that and kind of giving them that feedback, they're going to make those connections.
So these are what we're going to talk about, and these are easy that you could try at home. Simply stating, replace don't with do. So instead of don't climb on the couch, I'm going to keep using, Colleen, you said couch, so now couch is in my head.
Yeah.
You know, don't climb on the couch. You could say, hey, why don't you walk over here? Or why don't you try to climb over on this jungle gym? You know, whatever it may be. So replace the don't with the do.
Hold the door, hurry before bugs come in.
Another big
Like
one.
a lantern? Like a lantern?
Another big one that we can do is offer choices. I see this a lot when I'm going into preschools, daycares, even at some of our own centers. You know, kids have so much coming into their ears and in their brains every day, all day long, that if we come at the child and say, hey, I need you to do this, we might see a behavior, we might see an overwhelmment at that point in time. But if I come and say, hey, do you want to do A or would you want to do B? That sometimes lets them process. It gives them time to think about, oh, maybe I do want to do A, or maybe I do want to do B. Tell your child the when. So in the next slide, we're going to talk about an example. You know, if you have Tommy always wants a piece of candy and he wants the candy now and he wants it, right this second, and he might start crying, or we might start seeing a big behavior because he can't have that candy. You can easily tell your child, hey, you can have that candy when we get home, but then you need to brush your teeth. So telling him exactly when he can have that or whatever's making him upset. Lastly, we'll try that first then language. So if Tommy's really upset because he wants to watch TV right now, well, Tommy, first I need you to put your dish away, then you're going to be able to watch TV. It's as simple and easy as that. Do you want to go to the next one? There's
Yep.
2 more, and then we're going to do a little practice. Okay. Then there is give your child time to think. So we as adults, we're processing, we're firing off all cylinders all the time. We have to remember that these tiny little brains need time to process. Give it about 3 seconds and then maybe try again. So you could say, hey, Tommy, do you want A or B? And then as the adult, stop yourself to give them that time to process it. Same can be said for if we say, hey, I need you to keep your feet on the floor. Immediately, the child might jump back up on the couch, but we have to give them time to process what we're saying. Also, help your child to remember. So if it's a fight every morning, getting ready for school, getting out the door on time, if you know that your child needs to find their shoes and they're kind of just standing, not knowing what to do next, you could say, hey, remember, go grab your shoes now. So it's okay to help your child remember what you need done and to kind of form what that good behavior is going to be. And I put a little bubble on here to stay away from sarcasm. We as adults, me personally, I could be very sarcastic at times. My facial expressions will give me away at any time. But with little kids, again, their tiny brains, they don't understand what sarcasm is. And that could just make the situation amplify. It's going to make you frustrated. It could make the child frustrated. They don't know what sarcasm is or what that meaning behind the sarcasm is. So they're not going to understand that. Go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead. Okay, so let's practice. We're going to practice some of those things that Molly just went over. So what we're going to have you do is type a more positive response in the chat box for each of the phrases below. So we're going to ask you to participate in the chat box. And the first, we're going to do one at a time. So everybody just focus on number 1 first. The first one is our practicing replacing don't with do. So, and it's not just don't, it's any like negative phrase. So our negative phrase is stop running. So instead of yelling stop running, how would you turn that into a do or a positive statement? So if you can type that into the chat, and I'll kind of read through the responses as I see them. So we have people saying walk, walking feet, you may walk, please. Let's use our walking feet. Great.
Oh, you may walk, please. I love that.
You may walk, please. Great positive ways to say instead of stop running. So you can see how, if we said stop running, a child might, and you're saying the word running, so they might, continue running, or they might start jumping or jogging or doing something else. But if you're saying walking, then they know the direction that you want them to do is walk. So then they can follow that direction.
And remember, the little brains, when you say stop running, just like any little brain, they're not listening to that first word. What's the word they're hearing? Running. So we're reinforcing that word of running by saying stop running, stop running. The last thing they hear is the word running. So that could be in their little brains. Oh, mommy's saying running. That's what I'm going to keep doing.
Okay, now this one, we should have a variety of responses for this because it could go a lot of different ways, but we're trying to offer a choice. So maybe it's, cleanup time. We want to clean up and go to lunch. And we're saying, go pick up your blocks. So we want to somehow turn that into offering a choice. Let's see if you guys can type something in. So we have somebody that's saying, do you want to pick up the red blocks first or the blue blocks first?
Perfect.
Great one.
That's a good one.
Well, let's see if anybody else has another option for us. So while we're waiting for people to respond, this option, do you want to pick up the red blocks or the blue blocks first, still gets the child to pick up all the blocks, right? So you're just kind of like giving them a little bit more of a structure to the pickup, because if there's a lot of blocks on the floor, it can be overwhelming for them to pick it up, especially if they've dumped them all. And that was probably fun for playtime. And then over the cleanup time, especially if cleanup time is like, hurry up, it's time to go, we got to hurry, that might be overwhelming. So maybe if we kind of, give it a little more structure and say, do you want to do the red first or the blue first? It kind of makes their brain only focus on one thing and could kind of eliminate the stress from it a little bit or give them a little focus. How about, would you like me to help picking up the box? And I think that too, especially for the age of the child, if you have a very young child, it could be overwhelming for them to pick up all those blocks. So even when you were talking about the colors, it might be like, do you want to pick up the red and I'll pick up the blue, or, I'll pick up the blue and you pick up the red. So to help them, give them the choice of color too, or do you want me to help? Do you want to pick up the blocks or the Legos? That's a good one. Let's clean up together and we can have a snack. Let's race and see who can get more blocks in their spot. Yeah, making it into a game is also a great idea for, cleanup. And then just thinking about somehow, trying to make it a choice. Are we, racing for this or that, or how are we going to get to the next activity? But great responses, keeping it positive and focusing on getting the task done, right? That's what we're looking at.
Yeah,
so
especially that can be true if your child, every time it's time to clean up, that's the trigger. That's when you might see a behavior, when you see a meltdown. So instead of immediately saying, hey, go pick up your blocks, that's when you're immediately coming in, hey, do you want me to play with the blocks with you, or do you want to clean them up right now? Or, hey, do you want to, I don't know, do our jumping dance, or do you want to clean up your blocks right now? So if they're having that behavior, then those little brains, we're going to come with the two choices and then give them a second to kind of process that and choose one. And if we have, a child that's always going to pick the other option, that's when we can maybe take another tool out of our box and say, okay, well then let's make it into a game. Who can pick up the fastest? Or you pick up the red, I'll pick up the green. So there's different ways to kind of come at, especially if you know that, something your child is doing or something that you're going to ask your child to do is probably going to end up in, an explosion or a meltdown. That's when offering choices could be really, really beneficial.
Okay, so let's do another one. The next one was, we want to talk about telling our children when they can do something. So when we need to tell them, sometimes we do need to tell them no, right? Like, no, you can't eat, candy right now. We're going to have dinner in a little bit. Or, no, we can't go to the park right now. It's raining. Or no, we can't do it. Sometimes we have to say no. But then adding that when in there sometimes eliminates them from meltdowns, right? Especially if they're old enough to understand the concept of when. So for this one, the comment was, we are not going to the park right now. So how could you turn that around so that you can tell your child when? If anybody has a response for that. After school tomorrow, we will visit the park. Good. I'm sorry you're disappointed. We can't go to the park right now. I am too. After we get the food shopping done, we can go to the park. That's a great one.
Beautiful.
We're going to the park when the sun comes out.
Perfect.
And so it really gives them a specific, time frame so that they can look forward to that. The tricky part about this is that you want to make sure you can carry it out, right? So you really want to make sure that, you can do that after the groceries or after the school tomorrow, because then you're going to have the meltdown when they expect it because you kind of promised it. So, you have to kind of watch your words and make sure that you can kind of carry it out. Or otherwise you'll just be in another when, oh, I'm sorry, it's raining now, we're going to try again tomorrow, or whatever it is that you're going to have to say in the next time. But of course those things happen. after we eat, we will go. Yep. So those are great responses. And it gives the child a little bit of calming so that they know, okay, I will get to go, just not right now. Okay. And then the last one we talked about in this section was using first then language. And we do this a lot in the classroom too, just to kind of say first this and then this. So in this example, we use the phrase, you can't have your iPad if you don't eat your dinner. And that's two negatives, right? You can't, or if you don't. So we're trying to do that the opposite way and use positives. So how could you rephrase that, you know, in a more positive way? First, you could eat your dinner, then you may have your iPad. Yep. So that's it's really like a standard answer, right? You just flip it around and say, first this, then this. And that makes it very clear to the child. And for us in school, a lot of times it's like two things. First, it's not color, but sometimes, I don't know why I had color in my hand, but sometimes it's like first snack, then home, or whatever it is that the children are talking about trying to do. And sometimes it's two words, right? It's like, first circle time, then this, or they want to have snack, right? So first circle, then snack, just because it's, you know, them trying to navigate the time of the day or the schedule in the day. And it's very sometimes hard for them. So we give them very clear first this, then this, and then they can comprehend that. And sometimes that comes before the when, right? They start to understand that one thing happens before the other, and then they can start to really understand that higher thinking of, you know, that when question is like, oh, after, you know, we go grocery shopping, then we can go. That's a little bit for, you know, a mature thinking, right? You might not be able to, you know, get that through to like a 1 or 2 year old, but as they get a little bit older, they'll understand that. But the first then is a little bit easier for them to understand. Okay. Anything else on that, Molly, before we move on?
No, first then, you know, I've personally used a lot with very young children. It's also helping your child to understand the aspect of a schedule, you know. So if you have your son or daughter coming up to you, oh, I want this right now, 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 you know, well, no, first we have to do this, then you can have that. Mm-hmm. So it helps your child to understand that, you know, even when they're in school or when they're in daycare or preschool, you know, they're working on a schedule as well. And then us as adults, you know, schedules are all around us. So really that first then is kind of that first step into your child understanding what a schedule is, knowing what's coming up, knowing, you know, what's to come in the future, knowing that, you know, when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you do is you go to the bathroom, then you brush your teeth. So it's that scheduling piece that's bringing it in.
Yeah. And so somebody was saying at home, we use work first, play later, and take care of your body first, play later. And it works for my son. Yeah. And I mean, we use that too, work first, play later. And sometimes that works too, especially if they know the concept of what that means, like work, whether it's homework or whatever it is you're doing in play. Yeah. And so that's a great response too. And it helps them with the schedule, and it helps them, and it's positive. So the whole point of this is to try to take away that negative language. And so it's all positive to try to, you know, explain that to them. So thank you for your participation. We're going to move into some practices for school now. So that was some great practices for home, and these are some practices for school, which are very similar. But as we know, we have children that have some challenging behaviors at school as well. So, you know, and these are things, you know, we have both families and some teachers out there, but if you're having like parent-teacher conferences and you're talking through some of these things with your teachers, then you can even recommend some of these things. So when teachers tell children what they can do, children begin to manage themselves. For example, a child is throwing sand on the playground, can be shown that instead she can use a shovel to put the sand in the bucket. The teacher might say, if you want to play in the sand, you can fill this bucket. Would you like the blue bucket or the red bucket? So she gave her a specific way to play with the sand and then offered her a choice. So that was, you know, and oftentimes you'll see this happening. You'll see kids playing and they might not know how to play with the sand. It might have been the child's first experience with playing with, you know, in a sandbox and not knowing what to do with it. So throwing it in the air might have been, you know, a response, or it might have just looked fun, or it might have been something, you know, she saw kids do, or he or she saw kids do, you know, somewhere in the park. So it really is just guiding the children, right? We're teaching the children how to play at this age. So it really is, if you want to play with the sand, you can, here's the shovel, you shovel it in the bucket. It's really about showing, modeling, and then offering choices. So in this way, the teacher honors the child's interest, but directs it to a more appropriate play. And that's a really key point here, because we really, and even for at home or anytime you're out in public, or families, or, wherever you are, it's really important to not necessarily take the child away from the task. If the child is having a good time in the sandbox, the response, wouldn't be to say, oh, you're done playing in the sandbox now because you don't know how to play appropriately, right? We really do want to honor the fact that the child is interested in the sand, but we want to kind of direct them to the best way to play with the sand. Hey, if you want to play with the sand, that's great. Here's the shovel, here's the bucket. Which one do which bucket do you want? And then kind of guide them to do it the right way. And then over time, they'll get it. And, you could work through, if they continue to throw sand, over and over again, you could work through that differently, but the immediate response shouldn't be, no, we're out, right? And we do want to try to teach them, and hone them in. Not to say that you're going to do that 27 times if they still continue to throw it, but your first response shouldn't be to just pull them out of the sandbox, right? So we want to at least show them and model it. And it might take multiple days, multiple tries for them to, learn how to do that. But at least you're giving them some options and giving them some modeling and showing them what to do. Again, always focusing on the positive word phrasing instead of saying no, trying to start with words like, please do. I saw some of you use that language in the responses that you gave. We do it this way. Thank you. No, thank you. You can, or I appreciate that you, let's do it this way. Or how about we try this, instead of, throwing the sand, how about we try it this way? Using things like, I like the way you've done that, or I love that. I can see that you really like this, or I understand that's difficult. I know somebody used a phrase like that in the responses too. Those are all great ways to not just use it positively, but also kind of acknowledging that, especially when you say, I understand, you're acknowledging to the child that you get that it's frustrating, because you're a little bit like validating that I get it's hard. I know you want to jump on the couch. I get it, but right, we're going to try to do it this way. Or, and maybe they're, depending on their age, they might understand why they can't do things. Like Molly said, that might be a little bit of a later skill to explain to the why, but focusing on the, here's what we need to do. But also using that word understand is helpful for some kids too, so that you're kind of validating that I get it's frustrating, or I get that you want to do that. It looks really fun. So those are some phrases and some great ways to start. And so the bottom line here is that positive relationships with parents, teachers, and other caregivers provide the foundation for a successful and happy child, and are the building blocks for your child's self-esteem and ability to empathize and predict future positive behavior choices. I know that's a lot of words, but again, the bottom line, we want to have positive relationships, and that starts with our positive language and using it proactively. So trying to have that awareness of, I'm going to start to turn my phrases around. Instead of saying don't, no, stop. I'm going to start using the, what you want them to do. Feet on the floor, or come over here. And while I'm saying that, I'm just going to give you one, quick example. And this is like a really personal story, not my personal story, but something that I experienced one day. Because I'm constantly like kind of studying this. Molly and I are always talking about it. We work with preschoolers, we're talking with parents, and it's always on my mind, right? I'm kind of eat, sleep, and breathe, like, behavior. And so I'm always thinking about it and looking in the community and seeing it. And sometimes I feel really bad because I know it's frustrating and parents get embarrassed. Kids are always having tantrums, and that's kids. But I know that it's embarrassing sometimes, and sometimes our reactions are even worse because we're in public, because we don't know what to do, and we don't want people to see it. But anyway, one time I did have this whole experience where I saw this child And we were at the beach, and the little boy was walking towards the water, and the mom was getting ready with her older children. He was a toddler, and she was trying to frantically kind of grab all of the beach stuff. And of course, she was nervous that he was going to run away into the water and, float away. And that was, so she kind of was yelling to him, and she was saying, stay away from the water. And she kept yelling, kind of stay away from the water. And as she was doing that, she would turn around and gather the things. And each time she would turn around, he would run back to the water. And I thought, oh, this is not going to be good. So I was kind of paying attention, half of me because I was going to run after the kid if he got in the water, but also because I kind of felt bad for her because she was by herself and she was trying to gather all the stuff, and it looked like a lot, So then she said it a couple of times, stay away from the water, right? Then after the third time, she looked again, and here he was. And I noticed him, and the waves are coming in and out. And I noticed him when the wave came in, he stepped back. Right? So think about that. The wave was coming in and he stepped away from it. So in his mind, this little toddler, who was probably like 2.5, 3 years old, actually did follow the direction. He went up to where he wanted to be and he stayed away from the water. That's what she said. So in her mind, that's not what she wanted, right? So think about that. She didn't want him to leave her side. She wanted him right where she can see him because she was afraid. So of course anxiety was high. She was nervous. She told him 3 times. That's not really what she wanted him to do. By the time the third time came and she turned around and saw him over there, she went over and she, picked him up and swatted him. And here I was like, oh no, I felt horrible watching this experience. But in my mind, I kept thinking that little boy is so confused now, and that was such a great example for me to bring back to other people, to say, now this little boy thinks that when I follow directions, I'm going to get slapped. He got a little smack on the bottom. But now we've created a whole scenario where in mom's mind, he didn't follow directions because he went over there. But in his mind, he did because he backed up when that water came near him. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's just a little bit of a story that I think really connects to, we need to watch what we're saying, and we need to be very clear and very direct when we're talking to toddlers and preschoolers, because they're only hearing the words that we're saying. And sometimes the picture in their head is very different than the picture in our head. That mom wanted to say, stay here and don't move. That's what she meant, right? But she was saying, stay away from the water. And that's not what was going on in his head. And I was able to witness it from, 5 feet away. So, it's just a great way for us to really think about what's coming out of our mouths, and trying to connect that to make sure that our kids are not experiencing something confusing, because now that child might have a whole different behavior next time and mom's not going to know why. You want to take over, Mo?
Yeah, I'll do this one. Second bottom line. So we have 4 of them. We're almost there. The manner in which you talk to your child has a significant impact on his or her behavior. So this piece right here, if we remember anything, remember, Colleen is my boss. And if she's constantly telling me, stop, don't do that, that's the wrong thing. No. I'm not going to feel good. I'm going to not want to interact with her. I'm going to want to do something completely different, not do what's supposed to be done. Because, we're all human, and all humans like to feel, good about what they're doing. They like to be encouraged on what they're doing. So it's really just that all of tonight is really to be aware of the words that we have coming out of our mouths as the adults, but also, as Colleen was saying, be exact on what we're saying. So if we want our child to stand right next to us, hey, I want you to stand right next to me. Let's try that. Instead of saying, hey, don't go over by the water. I'm just using that as an example because that was talked about. Want to go to the next one?
Yeah.
Perfect. So third bottom line, making positive changes to your communication style can be hard work, but with a little practice, you will see a big difference in your relationship with your child. So again, that's almost reiterating exactly what I just said, being aware of it. I will tell you that whenever I go into one of our classrooms, I make it a point, because as soon as I hear somebody say, "Oh, good job," immediately in my head, I said, "Oh, you know what? I need to make sure that whatever the child is doing, I'm being descriptive on saying," because I want to say good job. I want the child to feel good. So I'll go in and say, "Oh my gosh, you are sitting so nicely and waiting so nicely for snack. That's really great of you," or, "That's really awesome for you." So making that positive change and really just being aware of it. We know it's not going to happen overnight. And really tonight is just about saying to yourself, "Hey, I'm going to try to switch my thinking here, especially if, I have Tommy at home or Sarah at home who really struggles with changes, struggles with different routines that you have during the day or during the night." That's where you really want to try to hone in and say, "Oh, can I offer a choice? Should I do the first then?" And we're still putting boundaries on the kids. We're still keeping them safe, but in a way that their little brains can kind of understand and process that. They're not thinking ahead by saying, "We're not going to jump on the couch because you'll get hurt." We're saying, "Hey, let's keep our feet on the floor." So that's that third one. You want to go to the last one?
Yep.
Okay. And the last one here is your child will feel more encouraged, positive, and independent as a result. You will enjoy a better overall cooperation. So that kind of wraps all three of these bottom lines together. We all want every routine to go smoothly, every choice to be made. But we do know we are human. Our children are human. There's going to be ups and downs. Really just overall trying to be more aware of what we're saying, but then also try to bring in those more direct, those more descriptive feedback, kind of just, if I say it again, try to being aware of it. If I need to add on that one?
Nope.
Okay.
So again, here's our, information, our next two sessions. If anybody's interested in joining the how to help your child understand and label emotions. And the last one was understanding early intervention services and eligibility. So, oh, God.
Colleen, I'll pop in with that label emotions. So tonight we talked about, tantrums, or we're having a really hard time. If you have a child who has big emotions, whether it be really sad, really angry, that could be a really good one to kind of tune into, especially when we talk about their little brains understanding what that emotion is. That's going to be kind of what we're talking about.
And
Thank
so
you,
again,
ladies.
go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, Colleen.
Oh, I was just going to say, if you do have any questions, you can, bring them to the center. We'll be more than happy, we can email exchange. And we do have the slides that we can pass over, and the recording can be shared as well.
Amazing. And this type of parent workshop, this is in support of our emotional growth and relationships pillars as part of the WellKind experience for our children and families. And I just wanted to echo the sentiment that this is work and it does take time. So all of these strategies need to be tried multiple times, and you need to put your own, infuse your personality into it. So I loved all the examples, Colleen, and I was thinking about also how tone is so important. So if we want our child to do something, we have to kind of make it fun, right? Just like Molly was saying, if her boss, Colleen, kept saying something in a negative tone, she wouldn't be motivated. So thank you for stretching us and helping us to consider our everyday language in a different way. So if anything, just one thing, don't get overwhelmed by all the things, but maybe just that first step is the awareness, as Colleen and Molly were saying, just paying attention tomorrow to what comes out, and just making yourself a little more responsible and being aware of the words that come out, and just note it so that we can start somewhere.
And I'm glad you mentioned about it taking time too, because that's one of the biggest hurdles for us as adults. When it doesn't work the first time, we think it's not going to work, but it truly is something that is a practice and does take time. So, you know, keep at it, and especially like those first then, and if you're going to use any of those strategies, it does take time for the child to either trust that it's going to happen, or, you know, it takes time for that whole process to kind of work out. But they are great strategies, and you know, keep trying.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll see you next month, and feel free to follow up with any questions and we will get the answers for you. Have a wonderful night, everyone.